Drama awaits, only on Echoes of Love. The adventure begins in the Josian era, specifically at Mapo Port, which is always crowded with merchants unloading their goods and with laborers carrying them to earn their daily bread. The ones controlling those workers were a group of thugs pretending to be the port's administrators. They made the workers line up after finishing their work to receive their wages, which were originally 2 cups of wheat. But the thugs would steal from them, giving them only 1 cup, then taking half of it as a tax. When one poor worker protested this injustice, the leader of the thugs, named Yuk, came and beat the man in front of everyone, took his food, and then looked at the others and said, "Anyone else want to object?" At the end of the day, the heads of the port and the thugs gathered before their boss to present their taxes. But these were not just sacks of wheat stolen from the poor laborers, they were fine fabrics and silks. When one of them brought his share, it was smaller than the others, so everyone mocked and scolded him in front of a younger member of another gang. His boss then proposed a fight to settle the challenge and see who was truly worthy of leadership. The fight began, but the young man completely overpowered Yuk. If their leader hadn't stopped the match, they would have been swearing oaths over Yuk's spirit and his cup of wheat. Afterward, Yuk went home with the rest of his gang. They told him, "Let's find you some clothes. If you go back to your wife looking like this, she'll chase you around with a broom and won't let you sit in the house again." He replied, "And who's this woman who dares chase me with a broom?" Then he waved his hand just like I'm doing now and said, "Who hasn't hit the like button yet? Who hasn't left a comment saying they forgot to like?" Anyway, as I was saying, she didn't even have toe mats to begin with, and here we see him running as his wife chases him with the broom. The next day at the port, the supervisors began assigning the workers their tasks again. A merchant came to Yuk complaining that the workers had gone to unload someone else's goods even though his shipment had arrived first. Yuk told him, "Sorry, those are orders. We don't make the decisions, I just carry them out." So the merchant went to speak to the boss, who was sitting with the deputy of the governor. The merchant complained that his goods had been at the port for a full day and needed to be moved before the rain came, and that he had even paid an extra tax to speed things up. The boss ordered the thugs to take care of it. Then the deputy said to the thug leader, "Fees for urgency, fees for transport, and fees for rain? Don't you think you're sucking the merchants dry?" The leader replied, "We're just simple thugs, sir. You're the ones truly sucking them dry. The taxes you impose on us are too high, how else can we pay them except with the sweat of the workers and the blood of the merchants?" The deputy flipped the table and said, "Seems you've forgotten your place. Watch your tongue, you're gambling with your life." The merchant went back to his master, one of the great merchants of Mapo, and told him that the thugs had charged him extra just for doing their regular work. Then he added that some goods were missing from the warehouse. The master asked, "And who has access to the warehouse?" The merchant replied, "Who else, sir?" Here we shift to Yuna, the daughter of the great merchant, whose lifelong dream was to work and trade with her father and manage the business herself. We see her cleverness as she sells goods skillfully, getting the highest prices from the royal court ladies. But when she returned to her father, he scolded her, "Will you stop causing chaos and get married like other girls? Haven't you stolen enough?" She replied, "Come on, father, that's not stealing. We're one family, and you've been my father for ages, it doesn't count as theft. Besides, I sold the goods for several times their original price." He was impressed by her wit but didn't show it so she wouldn't get spoiled. He told her that trade wasn't as easy as selling to women and that a girl wasn't suited to be a merchant. She pleaded with him, so he let her continue talking, then went right back to scolding her, as usual. The next day at the port, the supervisors called the workers to carry heavy goods. Among them was an old man. They told him to step out of the line and called for a younger, stronger man to take his place. The old man begged them, saying he had been standing since dawn waiting for work and hadn't eaten for 2 days, but they beat him and threw him into the river. The young man watching wasn't pleased but couldn't intervene. While carrying the goods, their foreman told them, "Handle these carefully, they're offerings for the king." But one worker slipped and fell into the river with the crate, so the young man jumped in and saved him. The deputy came furious and said, "How dare you save him and leave the crate?" The young man replied, "Is the crate worth more than a man's life?" The deputy said, "It's worth more than you yourself." Tell him to fetch it before climbing out. At the end of the day, the workers lined up for their wages again, but the thug said, "These goods belong to the king, shame on you for asking payment for such work." One worker said, "But I heard the law requires you to feed us." The thug jumped on him and beat him, then turned to the young man and said, "You don't look happy, want to show us your muscles?" He began hitting him, but on the third blow the young man caught his arm. At that moment, the deputy arrived and asked, "What's all this noise? And what's with all this wheat? Are you planning to split it among yourselves?" That night, the workers were exhausted. Some argued over food. The young man remembered the old man who hadn't been allowed to work or eat, so he went to find his house and left a bag of food by the door. But when he entered, he found a dead body inside. Hearing commotion outside, he rushed out and saw the workers saying the old man had taken his own life. When he looked closer, he saw the man hanging from a tree. They took him down to bury him. The next day, the merchant's convoy arrived, and Yuna was with them to unload their goods. The young man had finished his shift and returned to the port, bumping into Yuna by accident. He apologized and went to collect his wages. But the thugs told them there would be no pay that day either, because the goods belonged to a noble family. How could we demand payment from them? The young man stood up and said, "That doesn't sit right with me, not for a single coin. I'll find out the truth myself, and if you're lying, I'll deal with you with my own hands." He ran after Yuna and said, "Why won't you pay the workers just because you're from a noble family?" Her maid said, "I'm sure we already paid their wages." Yuna said, "See? Now leave me alone." He told her, "But no one's been paid for 2 days." The thugs came and grabbed him to stop him from following her, saying, "Looks like someone here needs to learn some manners." But we all saw who really learned manners that day. The young man beat them all soundly, even grabbing their leader, that weak man who looked like a sardine can. He held him up in front of everyone and said, "Where are the wages you took?" The man said, "We didn't take anything, and if you don't like it, go complain." So the young man went to the great merchant's house, where Yuna was, and told them about the missing pay. She tossed him a roll of fabric worth far more than their wages. He said, "Have you ever gone hungry for 3 days? Don't treat us with such arrogance." Then he cut off a small piece and said, "This is my share. The rest is for the workers." And he really did leave and give it all to them. Her father said to Yuna, "It seems the thugs stole the wages for themselves." Later, we see him sitting with the leader of another region, saying that he plans to settle in Joseon, take control of the river, and test new methods to seize the territory. And certainly, as a great merchant he would benefit a lot. He would too, but Yuna's father refuses and tells him that the law is above everything, so he leaves and goes out, telling his assistant that they need someone with stronger authority. "That won't do, sir," the assistant replies. The leader asks for thugs, and when they go, his assistant stops them in a line and beats them because they stole the workers' wages. He comes to Yuk and the boss appears and says to him, "Enough, this is sufficient," and calls Yuk over, telling him, "I think that's enough for you, and you should return to your homeland again." Yuk cries and says to him, "After all this, I don't even know who to return to, I have no one." He leaves very upset and asks his assistant to find that young man. We see the great merchant, Yuna's father, agree to take over the trade accounts and tell his assistant to teach her. As for the young man, he went to an area outside Mapo to check on work there and to sell wood. But the local man of influence demanded taxes from him. The young man told him that all the money he had was bought for goods, and that he would pay upon the first sale. The local chief refused and told him, "Leave your goods here." The young man replied, "Why not hand them to someone honest instead of keeping them yourself, since you are not on my level?" The man frankly did not believe him. He turned on him, took his goods, and left. He then went to the place where the young man lived, searched his bag, found a written letter, took it, and ran away because the young man had expanded his reach. We moved to Chun, who passed all the military exams and was appointed a new police commissioner. The first thing he found when he took office was that the people under his command were busy with pointless tasks. They presented him with hard labor and he said, "Is this the kind of work I will see?" Of course he didn't like this minced meat of corruption and wanted to restore order as it used to be. What was present at first no longer exists now. The important thing is that he is a righteous young man, not motivated by personal gain. But the ungenerous deputy who accompanies him said, "Do not interfere in what does not concern you, or you'll upset things, smart one." The great merchant's assistant begins teaching Yuna accounting and introduces her to the port leader because she will be in charge of trade from today. But they start mocking her because she is a woman. She tells him that from now on she will refuse to pay the urgency fees and the bickering that used to happen, because those fees rightfully belong to them. She even threatens to report them to the police. He said to her, "Do you still trust those authorities? I can't help you." But the thugs might help you, she thinks, so she leaves angrily. Yet his assistant tells her he is right and the thugs will help her more than the high officials. Yuna returns home but encounters the celebratory procession for Chun's appointment as the new district commissioner. Everyone present stands to salute him. Among them is that young man, who gets down from his horse and says to him, "Sol, you're still alive." They meet and cry. We go back 9 years, to when there was an uprising in the Mapo area. A war broke out between two rival regional bosses over control. They drove all the residents from their homes and slaughtered them. We see Sol and his mother trying to hide him from the invasion, but a soldier came and accused them, so Sol went out and tried to save her. Then another soldier on horseback came, tied him up, and separated him from his mother. That soldier killed her after they left the area. A woman among the survivors came looking to help the wounded. She found Sol and took him in, raising him alongside her son, Chun. After some time of war, Chun and Sol were fleeing soldiers because they had helped the daughter of one of the soldiers. That girl used to harass them and they also fought and defeated their enemies. They remained heroes until they returned home. Their mother stood and beat them with a stick as punishment for the trouble they caused, saying that at that rate they wouldn't be able to enter the government exams to join the police. Later, a police commissioner came and told them that Sol was barred from taking the exam in the first place because they were uncertain about his family origins. The commissioner told him, "If you think this is injustice, you may file a complaint to the judge." Sol went to the judge and requested an audience, but he was unavailable. He kept asking for a chance to take the exam, but the judge completely ignored them and let his guards treat him with contempt. The important thing is that Sol broke down, lost his temper, and attacked the guards until he caused a fire that destroyed the entire government office. His brother came and helped him escape, saying, "Sol, you must either return or join the police for our mother, at least." Sol replied, "Will you still be alive? The world will change, and one day we will surely meet again." Back in the present, Sol goes to meet Chun secretly at night and tells him that their mother died, but she remained brave, defending him to her last breath. She died from a very ordinary cold. Sol asks him to be a righteous official, unlike the other rabble, and to keep them apart because now he is a guilty man and being with him is dangerous. He says he will flee to the border, and even if he's killed he doesn't care as long as he saw him. He bids him farewell and leaves, but he is stopped on the way. When she calls his name, Sol is terrified because no one knows his name. She asks him to work for her and become a world-class thug. But Sol refuses and says, "I don't want to be a thug. And even if you turn me in, it won't change anything for me." She replies, "Very well. But certainly Chun, now in a respectable position, will benefit you." Sol agreed to work for her and help him take control of Mapo by force, on the condition that they won't harm Chun over the letter she took from his bag. The next day Chun began inspecting and found neither horses in the stables nor weapons in the storehouse. Some of the weapons he did find were rusty, thankfully. When he shouted at the captain responsible, he was dismissed along with the deputy who told him, "Grow up from this work and focus on the party held in your honor and enjoy it tonight." Chun could not bear himself and went outside. When he went out, the deputy followed and told Chun, "I fought in wars long ago and saw that once the invasion begins the government and the people flee and abandon the populace." Chun replied, "Oh my son, what do you think? We will protect here, but the king is not responsible for the people." He threatened that if Chun did not stop seeking justice so easily he would be accused of treason and exiled from the country. Yuk takes Sol and introduces him to the rest of the thug crew, and they sit at his house and eat together. Yuna was sitting balancing their trade accounts. Her maid comes and tells her that they took her workers and refused to transport the goods. Yuna goes to the port and says she will not pay the urgency fees, and that they should ask the merchants to unload their own goods. Indeed, she made her workers carry the goods, and the news reached Yuk, who came to the port to stop her. But she was very brave, faced him, and ordered her workers to continue. Yuk calls Sol and orders him to take the torch from her. Sol says, "Must I do this?" and goes reluctantly, standing before her and saying, "Just give me the torch, please." She asks him, "Do you think by doing this you are on the side of justice?" He tells her, "This complaint will not help." Yuk asks him, "What business is it of yours? Are you with her or not?" He took the torch from her hand, a tear in his eye, and she says, crying, "I thought you were a just and diligent man, but you disappointed me." He threw the torch from his hand and left her. She went away and filed a complaint against the thugs with the Inspector General and the police commissioner. One of his companions saw the complaint, stole it, brought it to him, and burned it in front of the deputy, saying, "And what could you do now if it reaches the king?" He demanded to see Chun and told him that these moves of his displeased him, and he had heard that Chun had been with one of the thugs at the temple. Chun apologized, saying that this was an old acquaintance he met by chance, then went to his office. When he learned that Sol had become one of the thugs, he wanted to find him by any means and said he would search the entire port for him himself. Seal was sitting, distributing the workers' wages and generously giving them their full rights and even more, to the point that the workers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Someone came to show him the exact amount that should be paid, but after finishing his work, Seal didn't care about that. He gave the workers what they deserved anyway. One of them walked beside him and said, "Do you think any of them will thank you for what you're doing?" Then he added, "In the past, the merchants were greedier than this, and even now, they're still just laborers." One day, the gang leader objected to his wage, so they grabbed and beat him. But I, bravely, couldn't stop myself from defending him. I took a sickle and went to strike the merchant who had attacked him. One of the workers handed me the sickle and said, "He's your friend, from your own town. You should defend him." I pushed the merchant toward the sickle, and by mistake, the sickle struck him. After that, they kept fighting the merchants until they defeated them all, and from that time on, they became the gang leaders. Then we see that he went down to the market looking for Seal and stopped by Yuna's shop to ask about him. Yuna walked with him and told him everything the government and the thugs were doing, but he didn't believe her. She didn't believe him either, since she had seen him close to Seal in his parade and assumed he was allied with the thugs. He said to her, "What makes you so sure he's a thug? He's the kind of man who would rather die of hunger than start a fight with someone for no reason." She replied that she had personally dealt with his criminal behavior. Then the gang boss who wanted to seize control of the river and settle in Joseon arrived with his 4 lieutenants. They attacked a region and forced its people to join them. He then entered a meeting of all the leaders, which the deputy chief had called, and they demanded that he let them take him down. But the deputy chief agreed to let the gang boss spread his evil and power instead. Later, we see the deputy visiting a high-ranking official in secret, telling him that he had approved the gang boss's request as he wished. The next day, at the harbor, the thugs were sitting with Seal when the youngest of them came in beaten by another gang. That night, Seal woke up and asked him to teach him how to fight so he could defeat that thug. He stayed up teaching him how to fight. The next day, that man was still searching for Seal. One of the thugs overheard someone describing Seal's appearance and rushed to warn him, but they couldn't find Seal at all. Seal, along with one of his thug friends, was beating the man who had attacked him. The man followed every instruction Seal had given him and managed to defeat his opponent. Meanwhile, the gang whose leader Seal had once beaten was searching for him to get revenge. When they asked about him, someone said, "He was right under my eyes, but I don't even know who he is." One of them replied, "The whole kingdom knows he's part of your crew." So he sat with them, and he and the rest of the thugs came under the boss's authority. Then the boss's lieutenant came to torture him for causing the injuries that had befallen their leader. While he was beating him, our hero Seal entered, defended them, and struck the guards. He said to the lieutenant, "Isn't that enough? Let's go now, all right?" The lieutenant replied, "I don't go to bed early." "Thanks, we'll spend the night together." He then fought Seal, but the cruel lieutenant pulled out a sharp weapon and stabbed Seal. Yet our man stood like a mountain that no wind could shake, continuing the fight as if nothing had happened. Then the boss came out and stopped the fight, asking Seal to come drink with him. But Seal said, "I don't drink. Let's just go." So Yak hit him for not obeying the boss the first time. The boss admired his pride but said, "I also have pride," and challenged him to a duel. Everyone told Seal to refuse, but he agreed, and the fight began. Seal was no less skilled than the boss, but unfortunately, he had a wound in his stomach, which the boss exploited, hitting him repeatedly in that spot until he won. The boss's lieutenant handed him a sharp weapon and said, "Betrayal deserves this end." The boss took the weapon, intending to cripple him permanently. Yak lost control of himself, grabbed another sickle, and struck the boss's leg, then fled and hid at home. The next day, the doctor came out from the boss's room and told his assistant that the boss would never be able to use his legs again. Yak sat with Seal and said, "We have to go to the boss and beg for his forgiveness." But Seal was nobler than that. He took his hand and said, "What's wrong with living peacefully apart from them? I promise I'll protect you." At that time, the boss was eating, then asked to see Yak. When Yak arrived, the boss said, "There's no need to apologize for what happened, it was the right thing. If Seal hadn't been wounded in the stomach, he would have beaten me." He added, "I'm no longer fit for the position I hold now. I'll return to my homeland." Then he took off his coat, placed it on Yak's shoulders, boarded a boat, and left. Yak became the new leader in his place. When they returned home, Yak's wife spoke with Seal, saying, "That man doesn't even know how to defend himself, so how did he become a leader? You're the one who made him one, aren't you?" Then she told him that during the famine, her father had to sell her 2 sisters, while she herself caught the plague. They threw her into the street, and she lost consciousness from the fever. When she woke up, she found herself in that man's house. He fed her, gave her water, cared for her, and saved her life, then married her. She said, "He may be a little simple-minded and not fond of showing his kind heart, but he deserves to live. Promise me you'll keep protecting him and never abandon him." Seal promised he would stay by his side and protect him, then said, "Can I finish my meal now?" Yak had overheard their conversation and was deeply moved. The next day, Yak, his wife, and their group of thugs moved their home and base to the former boss's place. At the harbor, Seal set up a canopy for the workers to shield them from the sun and reduced their taxes, telling them these were Yak's orders so they would grow fond of him. At that time, Chun went to the prince to file complaints against the government for handling the kingdom's horses and weapons without consulting anyone. He wanted to report them. The prince said to him, "You're a very righteous officer, but a fool," then asked his name and told him he'd grant him permission to act, since he too wanted a land where people could live in peace. Yak went to the deputy chief and handed him the leadership uniform, saying, "A war is coming. Only those who have suffered will remain, so be careful these days." When the merchants heard that Yak had become the new boss, they went with Yuna to offer him a gift as a bribe. But right after they left his place, they saw Chun arriving and were all arrested, including Seal. On his way to prison, Seal remembered his conversation with the prince, who had told him, "More than half of the kingdom's wealth is stolen before it ever arrives, and those behind it aren't the officials, but a power far higher and greater." Chun said he would begin by weakening their confidence through the thugs who strengthened their influence. But as soon as he arrived, he met the deputy chief, who then went to Yak and said, "It seems you've been arrested. So, you admit you're guilty?" Yak replied, "Yes, I'm guilty, and torn apart with regret, ha ha ha." The deputy said, "All right, that's enough. Release them now." Chun shouted, "Your old methods are over." The deputy replied, "Ah, we've grown older, and the years have gotten longer," then ordered his guards to arrest Chun on charges of helping the thugs and taking bribes from them, yes, the same thugs he himself had captured. The guards took him away and threw him in prison. Yak said to Seal, "See? Didn't I tell you the king is useless?" And that villain was the one running the entire system. The deputy inspector went to the prison and threatened him, saying, "If you don't confess, your end will come soon." Then the prince went to the police chief and asked him to release Chun from prison, assuring him that it would ultimately be in everyone's best interest. When the news reached the deputy inspector, he nearly lost his mind. He ordered his men to find anything they could use to catch Chun again and throw him back in jail. Meanwhile, Yuna was at home discussing with one of their aides the routes that had been blocked to their trade. She was considering asking the gangsters for help, but her father called her in and told her that from this day forward, she was completely out of the trading business. She was not to interfere with work again, and those blocked routes were her fault, the result of the complaint she had filed with the Inspector General. Yes, that very complaint that never even reached him. Everything had become obscure, and everyone was playing everyone else. What mattered was that he told her there was a suitor who had asked for her hand in marriage. She replied, "And why didn't you ask for my opinion?" He answered that he had already accepted on her behalf. She stormed into her room, furious, and refused to eat. The next day, when her maid brought her food, she didn't find her there. Yuna had already left and gone to the port. At the port, a mischievous little boy ran up, snatched her necklace, and darted away. She chased after him until she came across a group of gangsters. She pleaded with them, saying, "I'll give you whatever you want, just give me back that necklace, it's a keepsake from my mother." But they began mocking her and harassing her until Seol appeared at that very moment. Everyone froze in fear. He took the necklace from them and calmly handed it back to her. One of the thugs was about to attack him, but his companion warned him not to even try. Yuna grabbed Seol's hand and ran off with him, even though no one was chasing them. When she finally stopped, she said, "Well, I think we lost them." "Good job, hero." Seol replied, "But why did we even run?" She said, "Because there were 5 of them, and they would have crushed you. Now I can say I saved your life." Simple. Seol played along and said, "Yes, of course. I understand that." Then they went to the port, where Yuna saw the workers sitting under the blazing sun. She asked why, and Seol replied, "They're afraid to sit in the shade in case they're taxed for it. No matter how many times I tell them sitting is free, they don't believe me. They're just not used to kindness." Yuna turned to the workers and said, "You can sit in the shade. I promise your wages won't be reduced." The workers immediately rushed to the shaded area and sat down. When Yuna returned home, the merchant who worked with her told her that Seol had a good reputation, that he was always helping the poor, had abolished their taxes entirely, and paid their wages generously. She praised him too. Her maid smiled and said, "Why are you smiling like that since you came back?" Yuna replied, "Stay away from me, dear. Just bring me some water." Then she sat down with the merchant, talking about how backward Joseon was, how the countries around them were advancing day by day while they built walls of ignorance and injustice around themselves. As for Yuck, he put on the former boss's clothes and said to Seol, "Well, what do you think of me now?" Seol replied, "Splendid, my friend. Like a string of pearls wrapped around a pig's neck." Yuck laughed and said sarcastically, "So that's how handsome I look, huh?" At the end of the day, everyone attended a meeting called by the deputy director. Yuck went inside to wait for him, while Seol stayed outside. In the next scene, we see the prince sitting with Chun, telling him that they must stop the flow of corrupt money for the sake of the greater good. Chun asked, "And what is it you want me to do?" The prince answered, "You must find out who the hidden hand behind all this corruption is, only then can we take back the state." We return to Yuck, who had just finished the meeting and was leaving the hall when he was approached by the gang leader seeking to take control of the facilities one by one. Their eyes met briefly, Yuck's and Seol's. That night, when Seol returned home, he had a nightmare about his mother's murder and remembered the killer's face. He realized it was the same man, that very gang leader. The prince summoned the head merchant, and when he arrived, the prince took him to a secret place where he kept maps of all the regions of Joseon. He asked the merchant to find an expert who could draw one comprehensive map, one that would show all 10 trade routes passing through the country in a single view, so he could see where the money entered and where it left. That way, embezzlement would decrease and wealth would increase. The head merchant asked, "And if I refuse, what will you do?" The prince said, "Nothing. But if you accept, I'll help your sick son by giving him a small government position worthy of him." The prince smiled faintly, knowing that nepotism still ruled everything. Meanwhile, Seol had reached the gang leader's hideout. At the same time, the deputy inspector secretly went to meet him. He entered and handed him a pendant proving he was from Joseon, saying, "When you take control of the river and begin the next phase, don't forget that I was the one who threw you the rope you clung to, the one that started your rise." Then he left. At that moment, Seol saw Chun. Chun rushed toward him and began to beat him, saying, "You ran away to become a thug?" Seol replied that this gang leader was the one who killed his mother. Chun said, "Then let me avenge her for you, because if you get mixed up with these thugs, you'll never get out again." Seol answered, "I have people I must protect now. Don't worry about me, I won't do anything that forces you to arrest me." Afterward, Chun went to the prince and told him that this gang leader had taken over all the facilities with the deputy inspector's help. The prince replied, "This government is rotten to the core, and Japan is watching us from across the river. We must be ready to defend ourselves at any moment." He handed Chun a rifle, taught him how to use it, and said they must always stay prepared. Then the head merchant's assistant came and told him he had found skilled mapmakers and artists, and reassured him that his son had reached the temple on the mountain, where he wanted to train for the upcoming exams. After that, Yuna's father entered her room and handed her the ownership documents of their trade and warehouses. He said, "So you can start from scratch if Joseon sinks or anything happens." Yuna was delighted that she could return to trade again, but he quickly spoiled her joy by adding, "Though there's no hope this country will ever set itself right, not in my lifetime or yours." Yuna replied sarcastically, "Thank you so much, Ben." The next day at the port, one of Yuk's men sat nervously. His companion asked him, "What's wrong? You look like you're hiding something." He replied, "No, Seol told me not to talk." The other man said, "Then don't, or better yet, tell me right now." After arguing back and forth, he said, "Fine, I'll tell you, but this is a secret." As soon as he revealed it, the other man shouted angrily to the rest of the gang, "Who's the bastard that dared to stab Seol's mother in the heart?" Everyone gathered and agreed that they must avenge Seol and repay him for all he had done for them. They gathered with Yuk and told him what had happened. But when they learned who that wretch truly was, they hesitated for a moment, though not for long. When Seol passed by and overheard them, he remembered what he had told Chun, that he would always protect them and would never do anything that would lead to his arrest. He said to them, "I'll handle this myself," then left and went into his room. "Calm down now," he told them, "because if you do what you're planning, the world will collapse over your heads." The four men left, furious and frustrated that they couldn't avenge their brother. Then the youngest among them came up with an idea. At least they could teach the gang leader a lesson. That night, they met secretly in their room, hiding their plan from Yuk. They decided to keep an eye on the gang leader and attack when he walked alone. Every time Yuk came in, they pretended to be asleep. When he caught them awake again, he mocked them, saying, "What's this, my brothers? Did you bring the flies in with you?" They agreed to execute their plan when the crescent moon appeared. They spent the entire night practicing how to surround and ambush him. During that time, the deputy inspector went to meet the mysterious high-ranking figure and told him that the prince had been visiting his house often, bringing many people with him every day, men who claimed to be painters. We then saw the prince begin to carry out his vision. He connected the maps together and began to see all the mountains, rivers, and fertile lands fit for cultivation and settlement. The artists and experts had nearly completed half of the great project the prince had entrusted them with. Meanwhile, the deputy inspector continued plotting with another mysterious figure, a woman. He told her that the prince was spreading rumors that Japan was preparing to attack Joseon in order to create unrest. She instructed him to eliminate anyone who might cause trouble or send word to the royal court. She also promised that if he completed this task without incident, he would receive the commissioner's position he'd been promised. As for our gentle gang, they gathered in the forest where they had agreed to meet, hiding and waiting for the gang leader to pass. When he did, they all ambushed him exactly as planned, but everything went the opposite of what they expected. Unfortunately, he was armed, and their courage vanished in an instant. They fled in panic, barely making it back home, with the gang leader chasing after them. Once the three regrouped, they realized the youngest among them was missing. Yuk and Seol rushed out when they heard the commotion. Seol quickly understood that they had tried to kill the gang leader and immediately went to search for his friend. But he was too late. The gang leader had already caught the boy and stabbed him. "Who ordered you to do this?" he demanded. The boy replied weakly, "I came to avenge my brother." The man said, "No, if that's the case, then I'll let you do what you wish to me." But when the boy tried to strike, the villain stabbed him again. At that very moment, Seol arrived and saw what had happened. He ran to the boy, but it was too late, he was dying. "I wanted to avenge you," the boy whispered, "but there's no hope for me, farewell." Seol broke down in tears but soon steeled himself and stood to fight the gang leader. Still, he ended up beneath the criminal's blade. Just then, Chun arrived, arrested the gang leader, and promised Seol that he would personally finish him off one day. The next day, a funeral was held for the young man. Everyone was devastated, especially Seol. Yuna saw the ceremony from afar, and her maid told her that the boy had been very close to Seol, that Seol had loved him more than anyone else. Then they carried him away for burial. Seol stood before the river, lost in his memories, crying bitterly. Then he began training with his sword, honing his skills for the dark days ahead. Meanwhile, Yek secretly took out the letter he had stolen and hidden from Seol. The deputy inspector went to visit the gang leader in prison, and the latter managed to manipulate him with just a few words. "I'll be beneath your feet, under your watch, and at your command, I'll do whatever you want." The deputy inspector was overjoyed and ordered his release. Later, he went to Chun's office and said, "How dare you release a criminal from prison?" Chun replied, "It's unjust, the victim was the one who attacked first." The deputy inspector slammed the table and sneered, "You're a captain surrounded by rumors, and you still haven't learned to keep your head down?" He laughed mockingly, and Chun said coldly, "Laugh all you want, we'll see how long that laugh lasts." The prince summoned Chun to show him the map he'd been developing with the head merchant. Chun was astonished. The map revealed every river and all 8 intersections across Joseon. But someone outside overheard their conversation and immediately went to inform the deputy inspector. The deputy inspector rushed to the mysterious high official and reported that the prince was creating a map of all Joseon's trade routes, a forbidden act that could be deemed treason. The official ordered him to seize the map and eliminate the prince. After that, the deputy inspector summoned Chun and handed him a letter. "No one can convince him except you," he said. "He's determined to seek revenge, and that's dangerous. It would be best for him to leave the country, as he once planned to." Chun went to Seol, gave him the letter, and apologized, saying that everything he was going through was because of that letter. But Seol replied, "Do what you will. I'll do what I must." When Seol returned home, he found Yuk waiting for him. Yuk warned him against carrying out his plan, saying that revenge would bring nothing but misery and put him and his loved ones in even greater danger. Seol said he would not back down. When Yek threatened to hand the letter over to the authorities, Seol shrugged and said, "Do as you wish." He had already grown weary of life itself. The cartographers completed the map, and the deputy inspector ordered the gang leader to retrieve it and kill the prince. Meanwhile, the prince gathered the finished map, handed it to the head merchant, and told him to take it to another country. "The future of Joseon lies within this map," he said. "It must not fall into corrupt hands." The merchant took the map and fled. The gang leader and his men attacked the prince, demanding the map. When he refused to speak, a fierce battle broke out. At the same time, the head merchant reached his home with the map. The gang had overpowered the prince, and the deputy inspector arrived to deliver the final blow and finish him off completely. Chun witnessed everything. The gang leader then declared that he knew where the man who took the maps lived. At that point, the head merchant told Yuna to gather all the important papers and financial records and prepare to flee. He placed the maps and all documents into a bag, gave it to his aide, and told him where to take it. Then he leaned close and whispered something in his ear. After that, he said goodbye to his daughter, urging her to escape with her maid and telling her where they would meet again. Yuna and her maid fled and hid as the gang stormed the house. The gang leader had already entered by then. Meanwhile, the head merchant poured gasoline over all the papers in the storeroom. As Yuna and her maid tried to escape, the gang surrounded them, but suddenly, Chun appeared, killed the gang members, and allowed Yuna to escape. Chun manages to take down 2 of them, but unfortunately, the gang leader overpowers and kills him. Meanwhile, the chief merchant sets the entire warehouse on fire, with himself inside it. Yona tells her maid that her father had advised her, should she ever find herself in danger, to seek out the thug Yuki, for he alone would be able to help her. As for the merchant carrying the maps, he was standing and waiting for the chief merchant to arrive, but when he did not show up, he remembered his last words whispered in his ear, "If I am late, go on without me, save what you have." Yona wakes up the next morning from a nightmare to find herself in a house on a hill belonging to Seol. Her maid tells her the news of her father's death. One of Seol's friends comes to inform him that Chun has been executed at the palace gate. He rushes there to see for himself and finds that Chun has indeed been executed, on false charges of treason hastily fabricated against him. Yona agrees with Seol and his team that they will help her, but Yuki intervenes and objects. She offers him all the money she has, along with deeds of farmland ownership. Everyone is stunned by the amount, even the merchant accompanying her. Yona asks Yuki to provide her with a boat that will take her to the country she wishes to reach. At that time, the deputy warden viciously beats the gang leader for failing to find the map, giving him a 3-day deadline to locate it, capture Yona, and bring her back. Then he goes to the mysterious figure who controls him, but the man harshly rebukes him, saying, "I thought you were useful, but you've proven nothing but a disappointment." The deputy warden apologizes and leaves, unaware that the higher-ups have already decided he knows too much and must be eliminated. Yuki goes to the deputy warden and confesses everything about Seol, handing him the letter he had received from Chun. He also reveals that Yona is hiding with them and exposes the entire plan, that they will set sail at dawn. The deputy warden asks, "Why confess all this now?" Yuki replies, "To protect my family. As long as Seol is among us, we will always be in danger." Meanwhile, Seol has already set his plan in motion. He arrives at the gang leader's house and finds one of his members wounded. He cannot bring himself to finish her off. Her brother enters the room, and Seol kills him instead. The girl dies shortly afterward. Seol takes her hairpin and her brother's necklace, brings them to the gang leader, and says, "Don't you want to join them in hell? They're waiting for you there." A fierce battle breaks out between them, and at last Seol defeats him. True bravery, ladies and gentlemen. The deputy warden goes to the riverbank where Yuki told him they would be, but he finds no one there. Enraged, he summons Yuki and beats him mercilessly, believing he had betrayed him to help them escape. Yuki swears he told him everything he knew, but the deputy warden strikes him again, strips him of his rank, and leaves. As for Yona and the rest of the gang who helped her, they have reached the top of the mountain through which they will cross into the neighboring country. There, they stop and bury her father. Chun arrives, and they tell him that his brother is buried in the same place. He offers his condolences. Afterward, Yona thanks him for everything he has done for her and offers to take him with them. But he says he is heading to the border. She points out the way and warns him that his journey will be difficult, urging him to be careful. Noticing that his hand is still bleeding, she removes her scarf, ties it around his hand, and bids him farewell. She walks away, then stops and says, "My name is Yona, and I will never forget your bravery as long as I live." He replies, "And my name is Seol. You must keep on living after this long journey." Then she leaves to continue her path. Meanwhile, the mysterious figure recruits another man to replace the deputy warden. In a meeting of the high-ranking officials, they all agree, under the orders of that same shadowy figure, to eliminate the deputy warden, and they do so. Yuki returns to the harbor, now nothing more than an ordinary street thug, as he once was. His gang members approach and tell him that Seol had known he would betray him, so he changed the plan behind his back and made them take the mountain route instead of the river. When Yuki scolds them for choosing Seol over him, they reply that they wanted to avenge their fallen brother too, and that the gang leader should have met his fate from the start. Later, one of the workers comes running to tell them that war has been declared and that the fighting is about to begin. The signal for war is fired into the sky. Yona sees it just as she is about to cross the border into the other country, while Seol watches it from atop the mountain. Here we reach the end of the story. Subscribe for more.